Good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes. I am J.D. Scarlett Morales. I am an assistant director with the Development Services Department, and I am also a member of the City of Fort Worth Diversity and Inclusion Employee Committee. On behalf of the committee, I welcome you to the Hispanic Heritage Month program. Music is a great way to celebrate. Weren't they wonderful? Thank the JP Elders Middle School Mariachi Estrella Tejana for getting us started with their fantastic performance. Let's give them another round of applause. If you enjoyed the performance, we're going to hear a little bit more from them later on in our program. This year, the theme for the Hispanic Heritage Month program is Trail of Mexican American Experience in Fort Worth. It is undeniable that Hispanics are an integral part of the fabric of this diverse city. So it is appropriate that we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. We also acknowledge and understand the history from Latino trailblazers and paths they've paved. So today, the Diversity and Inclusion Employee Committee would like to celebrate by inviting Dr. Pete Martinez, Associate Professor of History at Tarrant County College Northeast Campus, and founding board member of Historians of Latino American, Tarrant County, also known as HOLA, Tarrant County, to share with you his research and perspectives on the Trails of Mexican American Experience in Fort Worth, which is the subject matter of an HOLA Tarrant County pop-up exhibit, which is the same name as, which is currently on display at the City of Fort Worth. It is at the south end of the second floor, and it will be displayed through October the 15th. And the display is actually here on this floor, and it's on the other side of this conference room. The exhibit was created by Arturo Martinez using numerous visual resources from Fort Worth Public Library and based on Dr. Pete Martinez's research, and demonstrates the history of Mexican Americans in Fort Worth from 1990 to 1950. Each pillar chronicles key moments and shapes the experience of the Mexican experience and highlights their journey from nearly arrived laborers to building of their communities and becoming permanent and active members of the city. Before we get started on the presentation, I would like to introduce Assistant City Manager Valerie Washington and Chief Communication Officer Renee Tillis here with us today to share a message from city leadership.
Thank you. Again, wasn't that great for middle schoolers to be doing that? Here to the Pipeline to Northside High School, so we appreciate them being here. We also appreciate some of our executive staff and elected I see in the audience. So Jess McCracken, Assistant City Manager there in the back. Deanna, Head of HR right here. Dana, Assistant City Manager. And we have Councilmember Lauersdorf here, so we thank them all for being here. Thank you for joining us for Hispanic Heritage Month, this celebration. As the Chief Communications Officer with oversight of communications, the website, engagement, and more, there are some changes that I'd like you to be aware of that we've made in relation to the work we do for the City of Austin. So we have always, City of Fort Worth, I'm sorry. Whoopsie. It's been a fast year. Thank you for the correction. So the city website had a way that you can click on the word English, and it gave you a drop down for all of the things that you could then have the website automatically translated. And it came to our attention that if you don't read or speak English, you would not inherently ever click on the word English to give you the drop down for the other languages. So now we have a Vietnamese flag and a Mexican flag that at least gives you some indication to go there to receive the drop down that'll be able to then translate what it is that you're doing. We are also providing translation more regularly and frequently at our meetings. We have some of our engagement staff here that have really helped us out with our budget meetings that were all across the city, and particularly in the budget meetings where we knew that there would be a strong population potentially for those that are interested in coming. We have simultaneous translation, so it's happening in real time, and they're taking place in not a separate meeting where they're hearing it in Spanish, but in order to maintain the group dynamic, they have the translation available to them in real time. We had very few takers, so be sure to tell your friends and family that may be interested in these meetings that we pre-identify that they could take place and maybe feel comfortable in doing that. And then I think the most important news is we're going to have I was saying the first time ever, but the Pat Siswerda, who was in my role in the 90s, has written to us on Facebook and saying, I'm glad to see that you're going to have the first communications translator interpreter that's full-time in Spanish, in the Spanish language, joining us on October 9th. And so that's exciting news for us, but they did have a full-time translator, as I understand, in the 90s. There are those are some of the initiatives on the professional side. On the personal side, I wanted to share my personal connection to this heritage. Growing up, my parents, grandparents, and extended family introduced me to the rich and vibrant culture that we had in Hispanic heritage. We would listen to iconic Latin artists like Little Joey La Familia, which filled our home with joy and music. And another cherished memory is the holiday season when my family would come together to make tamales in preparation for our big extended family Christmas Eve celebration. It really was a time of laughter, togetherness, and sharing of delicious traditions. It's essential that we celebrate and honor the diverse backgrounds and traditions that make our city so vibrant, and Hispanic heritage is an integral part of our community, contributing to the tapestry of Fort Worth.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Renee, and thank you for being here, especially coming to Current City Hall where you have to navigate parking, especially if you come from other divisions. So thank you for taking time out of your day and your lunch hour to be here. As members of the city manager's executive leadership team, we want you to know that we're all here and appreciate and want to continue recognizing the rich diversity and heritage of our City of Fort Worth employees. Our city management team, our ACM team, is very diverse, and that's on purpose. We bring such different viewpoints to the table, as all of us do in this room, so it really is important to make sure we surround ourselves with diverse people and diverse thoughts, so we can be open and learn how to really run a top-class city, like we have here in Fort Worth. Our colleague Renee shared his personal connection to Hispanic heritage. And again, it's a reminder that we all have unique stories about our cultures and memories of growing up and things that make us who we are, and who we are when we enter into a room where we can feel comfortable. I think we've all probably entered rooms where you don't quite feel like people get who you are. And we want to create the environment here where any room, any meeting that you walk into, everyone is open and welcoming, and wanting to learn more about different heritages. As we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, thank you for the display that you have on the second floor. I hope everyone takes time to see that. I was here a couple of council meetings ago. There was a big Hispanic Heritage celebration out in the lobby, and we happened to have executives here on an economic development deal. And they were able to catch the city of Fort Worth just being us, right? We didn't put on this big celebration for them or to get them to move to our city, but they were able to come to Fort Worth and see that we value and cherish Hispanic heritage. And as a company that has Hispanic employees, they want to be able to move here and know that their employees are going to be welcome here at work and in our community. So I applaud us for being caught doing something right in that area. And I really applaud Christina Brooks and the Diversity and Inclusion team and the Diversity Committee for holding these events and bringing us together. And I'm looking forward to the presentation today from Ola. So thank you very much for being here. Let's continue to celebrate our differences, and let's enjoy the rest of this program. Thank you.
Now, without further delay, please help me welcome Dr. Pete Martinez.
It really is a pleasure to be here. And when I was invited to speak here, I was excited mainly because there's two things I'm really excited about. In particular, it's Fort Worth, my love for Fort Worth, and my love for Mexican American history. In fact, when I was a graduate student at the University of Texas at Arlington, working on my master's in history, I didn't really know where my path was going to go until I started looking at Mexican American history, and I tried to narrow it down to North Texas, and I didn't really find very much. So I started doing this work as a master's student, and then that basically triggered me from this exhibit that we sent out, the Trail of the Mexican American Experience in Fort Worth. Again, feel free to go down and look at it if you haven't already. And I'm going to start off by just talking about how, or kind of the roots of the migration in the first place. So if we look back at Mexico in, let's say, the 1870s, when Porfirio Diaz first took power, Diaz, if you don't know, was president or dictator, depending on your perspective, from about 1876 to 1911. So for a long time, Diaz is in power. He really transforms the economy. Just to put this in perspective, there were about 640 kilometers of railroad in Mexico when he took over as president, 640. And the railroad was basically run by mules. So you attach cars to mules and they would travel instead of actual locomotives or steam engines. By the time we get to 1898, we are up to over 12,000 kilometers. So we expand this quite a bit within 20 years, and we increase this expansion as we go into the early 20th century, before, of course, Diaz's reign came to an end with the advent of the Mexican Revolution. Now, when this happens, right, you can look at Diaz as a very positive thing, right? He transforms the economy. Mexico is able to trade. They get a lot of money. A lot of money comes in from foreign countries. They build up this infrastructure. But at the same time, we wind up taking away land, right? We have these land reforms where people in northern Mexico in particular and across southern Mexico start losing their homes because it's being taken by the government for investment from foreign entities, which causes this migration. So we have two different things happen, right? We have basically this stimulus of migration as a result of people kind of having to find their way now that they're moving out of this kind of feudalistic society, combined with these railroads that can take you long distances and no longer pulled by mules. So what you see on the screen before you is basically a map of railroads in Mexico in the late 19th century. So these railroads are going to start pulling people up, maybe not all the way, but start most of the way perhaps up to the United States border where they might find economic opportunities. So a lot of times we look at Mexican American history and we say, well, this big migration comes during the Mexican Revolution, which is in fact true. We do see a huge increase. But if you look further back, you start to see those numbers go back around the 1890s. So around the 1890s, early 1900s, we really start seeing those numbers tick up. Before the 1890s, we didn't really see it very much, especially in Texas. You might have seen it a little bit in California because of the gold rush, but you wouldn't have really seen it very much in Texas. So once we get to this era of the 1890s, early 1900s, we're going to start seeing this movement. Now, once they get to the United States, they're going to be looking for work. A lot of times it's going to be seasonal labor. In fact, most of the time it'll be seasonal labor. And they'll then take advantage of our railroads. And we have hundreds of thousands of railroads going across the country. This is an image of the transcontinental railroads from the 1880s. So we are hooked up all across the country. So once they get their way up to, let's say, San Antonio or El Paso, you can easily make your way to Fort Worth from either way. Fort Worth becomes kind of this transection of labor. We have these contract laborers, people who are recruiting Mexicans to come to Fort Worth. And in Fort Worth, they would give direction on where the work was needed. Sugar beets in Colorado, or watermelons, or onions, or something else. And then they would follow the railroads all across the country. At first, when we get into the early 1900s, a lot of times it's going to be kind of a transient. They'll come to Fort Worth, stay here for a few months, maybe a few weeks, and then kind of move on to wherever they move for work, and then come back. But by the time we get to the 1920s, certainly we have some barrios set up that are significant with fairly large populations. Sorry, this is not moving now for some reason. Let me try this. you able to move that by chance? Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is a map of our earliest barrios. You can see it may be kind of hard to see, but you'll see the number one is going to be Hell's Kitchen. That is an area pretty close to where we are right now. We'll see kind of these early remnants of a barrio. In fact, we'll see a business that's going to be established there in just a little bit. Down just southeast where you see the number two is also a small little barrio. Again, that one's not quite as big as what you're going to see with number three. Number three on the upper left-hand or kind of left side of the screen was nicknamed La Corte because of its proximity to the courthouse in Fort Worth. Of course, we now know that particular area as Tarrant County College Trinity River Campus. So if you know the history in Fort Worth, essentially what happens is we have this La Corte community, nicknamed by the Anglo population in Fort Worth as Little Mexico. Little Mexico existed up until the 1930s. At this point, we get into this New Deal legislation during the Great Depression, and the federal government and Texas and Fort Worth more specifically are looking for places to build new public housing through these New Deal programs. And they select Little Mexico's community. So what winds up happening is a community that was vast majority, we're talking about probably 800 Mexicans in Little Mexico are wind up being displaced as a result of the building of the Ripley Arnold housing project, which was then replaced by Radio Shack headquarters, which was then taken over by Tarrant County College. So that number three is going to be very significant kind of moving forward. Now, when that happens, we're going to see the populations kind of scatter. Now, early on, so when we get to the 1920s, most of the Mexicans that we can find in, let's say, city directories are listed as like laborers. They might work on railroads. A lot of them worked in hotels. So you'll see like the Texas Hotel, for example, and other locations. Some of them worked as dishwashers. We also started seeing some people with businesses, maybe tamale making or dressmaking, tailors, stuff like that. So we do start seeing proprietors also rise up. So the business class has its kind of roots right here in the 1920s, while you also have a lot of laborers that maybe live in Fort Worth most of the time and then still travel abroad or travel around the country for work. Next slide, please. Now, in the early 1900s, we also see the roots of what is now North Side. Now, when we think about Mexican representation historically, we tend to think of North Side's community. We'll talk a little bit more about District 2 for City Council since we're in their chambers right now. By the way, my dissertation focuses on political representation of Mexican Americans, so this is very appropriate for this. So North Side is developed in part by the Mexican, or established in part by the Mexican community because of the establishment of both the Swift and Company and Armour packing companies, both of them established in 1902. So as Mexicans start making their way into Fort Worth, it serves as kind of this place where they might look here and there for work, travel around the country, use the railroads. But when they decide to call Fort Worth home, they'll start working those meat packing plants, building up North Side, initially living on the east side of Main Street, and eventually moving over to the west side of Main Street. Next slide, please. So here's a depiction right here of Armour and Company. You can see that to the left. To the right, you'll see Swift. Keep in mind that at this point in time, Chicago was the center of the meatpacking industry. Both of these companies were basically branches of this Chicago slaughterhouse, this Chicago meatpacking industry. So at this point in time, we're really going to see North Side build up with those people working at Swift and Company and Swift and Armour and Company. Next slide, please. Now, by the 1920s, because there was concerns that were too many Mexicans in Fort Worth at that point in time, you'll see newspapers print articles like this, right? Mexican labor invading the city. So there's concerns that we have too many Mexicans in the city. So nearly 2,000 Mexicans were going to be deported. So this is a very organized effort to send them back to their original homes across the border in Mexico. And you can see that last slide, Adios USA, buenos dias, los Mexicos. So we'll see kind of this anti-Mexican sentiment to some extent. But what's interesting is that if you start looking at theses, right, there were sociology students at TCU that would study the Mexican community in the 1920s and 1930s. And I remember reading one thesis that kind of trying to analyze why Fort Worth in particular had a much lower crime rate than, let's say, New York City, which had a much bigger population. The conclusion, one of the conclusions by this sociology student was that Fort Worth didn't have as much of an immigrant population as New York. New York City, of course, was a hub to Italians and Irish and all these other populations that came in. So basically the hypothesis was if you have too many immigrants mixing together, it creates violent conflict. In this particular thesis, it said we don't really have that kind of immigrant population in Fort Worth. The only substantial immigrant population we have is Mexicans, but most of them are from here, which I'm not sure if you caught the oxymoron there, but most of them are from here, which means they're not really immigrants, right? Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. Now, I just have a couple of slides here to show the community of Little Mexico. So this was one of the homes. You can see families sitting on the front steps of this particular home in Little Mexico, or La Corte, as it was called. In the next slide. And you can see this one as well. So these are the homes that were torn down as a result of this construction of the Ripley Arnold housing project. Again, if you follow the city directory, what winds up happening is you'll kind of follow them year by year. During my research for this particular article, this is from a published article that I had with the Journal of South Texas. You'll see that essentially year by year, some of the people will move like every year. You can follow them and they'll move from the La Corte area up to maybe north side and perhaps further down to the southeastern part of Fort Worth. Usually they'll stay within a few miles because keep in mind, most of them are working downtown. So they can't really go too far if they live in La Corte, right? In the north side, they're obviously going to be working mainly in meat packing. In the south side, which I did not mention yet, they are working in Texas Steel. Texas Steel brings a lot of those workers down there. So let's not forget the south side population, which really explodes in the early 20th century, and which is very relevant to today. And when we get to the end of this particular lesson, can we call this a lesson? We'll call it a lesson. Okay. All right. Next slide, please. I want to bring this up as well. I mentioned that there are proprietors. For those who might know Rita Utt, Rita was very actively involved politically and socially and in community organizations in Fort Worth. She has been for several decades. She's really the one who put together Ola Tarrant County. So William Hiron is back in the back. So those of you who know William, he's also part of this organization. But Rita was kind of the glue that brought us together, kind of our leader. And she has this fascination, this love of Fort Worth as well. And this is her family. These are her grandparents and their business that they operated in Hell's Kitchen in the 1920s. So this is a long history of Mexicans in Fort Worth who've established themselves as leaders, right? They're not just a population that you can kind of move around. They are people who are claiming a part of the city and contributing to the city, building up our tourist industry. You're talking about people who work at hotels. Well, tourists in Fort Worth really like to broadcast itself as kind of this old cow town and where the Wild West begins, and who's actually working the hotels and catering to these people and take care of these people. Well, it's the Mexican population a lot of times. Next slide, please. I have this because we're going to kind of move around a little bit, right? So we're focused mainly up to about 1930s up to this point. I don't want to forget a lot of stuff, but this is just a table that shows how the Fort Worth Mexican or Hispanic population has grown. So I have Mexican, but really it's Hispanic. So just forget the Mexican part is there and put more Hispanic. They're kind of grouped together. It's vast majority Mexican, but when we get to 2022, it may not be quite as much as it used to be. So you'll see that growth. So if we look at, let's say, 1960, mid-20th century, we're pretty close to 5% population. By 1970, 8.5%. But keep in mind, the elementary school population in Fort Worth and Fort Worth ISD was around 13% by that time, which really is a sign that population is starting to grow. We can see around 20% from the 1970 up to today. And the next slide, please. And one thing that I want to point out about Fort Worth is that we don't often think of Fort Worth as a town with a high Mexican population because we're not really that close to the border. I just drove down to Brownsville for a conference, the National Association for Chicana and Chicano Studies Tejas Foco conference. I was a co-chair for that organization for a couple of years. Went down to Brownsville, and man, that was a long drive. I think that was about 8 or 9 hours to get down there. Now, of course, you can go a little bit closer, maybe Mission, McAllen, and only drive maybe 7 hours, right? 6 or 7. So again, we're pretty far from the border. You might think of San Antonio, you might think of Los Angeles, some of these border towns. You normally don't think of Fort Worth, but as you can see by this slide, Fort Worth is now now has the 10th highest number of Hispanics out of any city in the United States. 10th highest number, and we're climbing, and climbing very quickly. So understand that Fort Worth in today's world is very much built upon its Hispanic population, right? Without the Hispanics, we don't have the economy that we have. We don't have the history that we have. We don't have the environment and the culture that we have. And we're growing, right? This culture is really evolving over time. Next slide, please. And now we're going to start moving more towards this kind of political thing. So I mentioned my dissertation addressed political. Again, I've done a lot of different histories of Fort Worth. But I want to point out that in 1973, there's a court case called White v. Register that was put forth by MALDEF, the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund. In this particular court case, the result is essentially that you have to draw up single-member districts to keep from having people like people of Mexican descent from being represented. It's specifically looking at San Antonio and Bexar County and Dallas County. But Tarrant County saw this, and in 1975, Fort Worth put it up to the voters and said, tell the voters, do you want to move to single-member districts? And the Fort Worth voters said, yes, we do. Not screaming, they kind of like by 1 percentage point or less than a percentage point, but they did it. So in 1975, Fort Worth voters said, let's go to single-member districts. Now, before that, we'd already had 2 African-American city council members sit on in this Fort Worth City Council. No Latinos had ever sat on the Fort Worth City Council. We get to the next election cycle in 1977, and Louis Zapata, as you can see right there, along with James Bagsby. James Bagsby is your third, well, tied for third, African-American. From this point on, from 1977 up to today, there's been at least 2 African-Americans sitting on the city council every session. We can't say quite the same for the Hispanic population, but we do have Louis Zapata elected in 1977. He'll stay there for 14 years. So he will represent North Side. So when I talk about North Side, that's it. Now, we'll go to the next slide. Now, the following year, the Fort Worth Independent School District also had their single-member districts elections, and at that point, we had a man named Carlos Puente run for Fort Worth School Board. Carlos Puente had a history of political activism. He went to the University of Texas at Arlington and then was very actively involved in La Raza Unida Party, which was a Mexican ethnic party, if you're not familiar with it. It was very significant from around 1970 to about 1978, somewhere around that time frame. Had 2 different gubernatorial candidates. Ramsey Muñiz ran a couple of times, and there was another one after that. But Carlos Puente ran for school board in 1978 and won his seat. So he takes basically the first Hispanic seat in the Fort Worth Independent School District. We have many since then, but Carlos Puente kind of sets the way. He's very actively involved in politics. In fact, he actually had a newspaper of his own that he would publish during that 1977 cycle, where he was really trying to get people out to the polls to support Latino candidates, which of course helped lead to Zapata winning that election. Next slide. Now, after that, after Zapata's 14 years, he is defeated by Carlos Puente. So Puente takes his seat in 1991 and 1993, serves 1 term in office. He has to step down because his wife lost her job. She was the primary breadwinner, and then he basically has to go look for work. He goes back to school, gets a master's degree, and gets into school administration, does fairly well for himself. But he's still paying attention to politics, but he's not as directly involved. Now, what winds up happening then is after 1993, we don't see any Hispanic representation at all for 12 years. So from 1993 to 2005, there were no Hispanics on the Fort Worth City Council. And around that 91, around the time Puente was in office, one of the things that Hispanics were really pushing for, not all of them, but a lot of them, was to add 2 seats to the Fort Worth City Council. That was defeated in the early 1990s, was voted against. Keep in mind that the number of city council members, 9, including the mayor, was established in 1924. So by that time, it had been about 65 plus years. And then, well, after Puente, then we have 12 years with Jim Lane, who was very, very much loved by much of the Hispanic community in North Side. And then in 2005, Sal Espino becomes the third Hispanic city councilman. Again, very active still in Fort Worth. So Espino is successful. After that, we have Carlos Flores, 2017. That was a big election. There was a lot of money put into that election when Puente won this. But by Puente winning this, we still maintain Hispanic representation. We are still a face on the city council in the city of Fort Worth. And by 2016, we're also pushing for an expansion of the city council again. And this time, it's approved. So just this year, for those who really don't follow, and I have a feeling most of you already know this, but we did add two seats, and that leads to Jeanette Martinez taking her seat, becoming the first Latina on the Fort Worth City Council, and in the first time in Mexican-American history or Hispanic history, Fort Worth history, we have two Hispanics sitting on the City Council simultaneously. Carlos Flores, of course, who is still on there, and Jeanette Martinez, no relation to me, of course. All right, and I'll just wrap this up with one more thing. This has really been focused on the Mexican-American history, but we can't forget that, and especially in recent years, we have a lot of other Central Americans coming in. People from Honduras and Nicaragua, other places that are also contributing to Hispanic Fort Worth, to our culture, to our language, to everything that we do. In fact, probably about 10 percentage points out of the Hispanic population, at least, maybe higher, of the Hispanics that have come over the past 10, 15 years have been from Central America, not from Mexico. So we have to keep that in mind because that is part of our community as well. That's all I have for you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez, for sharing your research and your insight. I had no idea that Fort Worth ranked 10th as far as Hispanic population. It's great. I knew that we were multiplying. I didn't contribute, but I knew that we were multiplying. Thank you. Now that we've learned about the history of Fort Worth, Mexican-American trailblazers, let us take a moment to soak in some of that heritage with another performance from the J.P. Elders Middle School Mariachi Estrella Tejana.
Hello, everyone. My name is Josue Duran. I am one of the mariachi directors at J.P. Elder Middle School. Our other director is Mr. Froilan Cepeda. I teach the violins and the trumpets. Mr. Cepeda teaches the armonia, which is unique to mariachi culture because the instrumentation is slightly different than your typical orchestra or band. So before I start talking a little bit about J.P. Elder, I want you to listen about these students, these 7th and 8th grade students who have been playing about 2, maybe 3 years, okay? Their first song that they're going to play is titled Cariño. We'll have a couple of singers, so here we go. Ready? Instruments up. And 1, 2, 3. like I said, this group consists of 7th and 8th graders. So essentially, last year, some of these students were just learning how to play the instrument, right? At JP Elder, our program has been in existence since 1982. The first educator who started that program is an advocate saying that he was one of the first few mariachi programs in Texas. I believe him, he was my teacher, so. But he has continued to do mariachi education as once he retired, I actually took his position. So as my former teacher, I am now the educator for his program, which I am really, really excited about, right? A little bit about myself is I started guitar at JP Elder Middle School. I went to Northside, I transitioned to trumpet, and my former director is still there as well, Mr. Ramon Nino. If you guys happen to know him, he's still at Northside. He's doing a lot of great things for the program, for the mariachi education in general, right? I will continue a little bit more after they play this next song titled Árboles de la Barranca. Bring our instruments up. And 1, 2, 3, 1, ready, and.
Such beautiful sounds. I could listen to mariachi music all day long. But right now, I'd like to invite the directors of the mariachi, JP Elder Middle School Mariachi Estrella Tejana, to the counter so that they can go ahead and continue speaking about the school and about the mariachi group so that everyone can hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this okay with everyone? Yes, awesome. I hope you've been enjoying the performances so far. We do have one more song for you, but before I continue, I do wish that you look on the screen. That was really difficult to say, huh? Right now, what we have on the TVs or on the screens are a QR code for any donations. Now, this was a performance that we greatly accepted by Miss Veronica, so I really appreciate it. If you guys can give her a round of applause. She is the one who invited us, who set everything up, provided food for the children, provided the transportation, and our principal accepted, and we are here today. We do lots of performances. I saw Mr. William Gradante here as well, and he works with Arte de la Rosa, a big shout out to him because he invites us to do a lot of performances. Now, this program is year-round, right? Throughout the school year. And we work at a Title I school, so we do ask for donations and we do accept performances for donations as well. If you happen to look at the screen and would like to donate $5 or $10, we would greatly appreciate it. It provides so much for the students, for ourselves, and for the instruments as well, right? If you don't want to support that way, you can also just share the link and we would humbly appreciate that as well. So thank you so much. We're gonna do, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. We will play one more song, and this last song is called Solamente Una Vez. I hope you enjoy. You go, instruments up. And 1, 2, 3.
Solamente
Wow, that was fantastic and also inspirational. To see these Latin youth today embracing the traditions of the mariachi and ensuring its continues to flourish. Let's give them another round of applause. It's absolutely amazing. During the mariachis, I had the opportunity to see several bodies swaying to the music and a few feet tapping. If you are not impacted by that, this next part of our program surely will get you wanting to get off your feet. So please help me welcome two of our City of Fort Worth Latino employees whom will dazzle you with their fancy footwork. We, please help me welcome Joaquin or Jack Carvalho from the Mayor and Council Office, whom will share with us his background in Latin ballroom dancing, and will be joined by Fabia from Code Compliance for a demonstration before you can join them for a quick salsa lesson.
Yeah,
Take it away.
thank you. Can you hear me all right? All right, everyone, my name is, so it's actually Portuguese, so it's Joaquim Jack Carvalho. I actually get the pleasure, you got to hear a reference in a little bit, comes from Carlos Flores in the Mayor and City Council's office. Ooh, sorry about. Whoa, all right, here we go. It's been really great working in the office, been with the city 2 years, but during then, I've been involved in professional amateur ballroom dancing, my favorite category, and the one I'm dancing with my teacher and partner there, Shelly Castillo, doing Latin dancing. It's great. We wanted to show some Latin dancing, some salsa today, but I want to make sure, yeah. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Flavia Paulino, and I've been doing ballroom dancing for a few years as well, but the Latin styles are my favorite. And we'll be doing a little salsa demonstration, and then we want to see everybody down here for a lesson.
It's play. It's easier with music. Oh, perfect. We'll be able to get this turned up. But here's the best part, just like we talked about, we get to dance a little. We get to dance, but it's even better when we get y'all to dance. So, if anyone wants to come down, we're gonna do a really quick 5-10 minute salsa lesson. Would love to have anyone come down. I know some of you, so I'm happy to name drop. We got some coming down. I see 2. I see a few. If I can give like categories, if you've ever thought you wanted to learn salsa dancing, if you ever liked salsa dancing, you can come by later. It's real easy. Here, I'll tell you what, I'll have y'all right here. So you'll stand facing my way, and then, yeah, perfect. If y'all want to come over on this side, actually, it's easy. And then you want to face us. You're going to come and face that way. Would you be able to turn off my mic? I can just yell, it's fine. Oh, okay. Oh, perfect, you're great. And it won't get muted if I start talking or anything? Oh, perfect. Thank you, Paul. Okay. All right. Oh, we have one more? Yeah, here we go. So, perfect. So salsa's great. It's a really basic step. I'm a lazy guy. I love doing it because half the time you're just staying in place, getting the dancing going. So all of us are going to first start with our right, sort of our hip on our right leg. Ready? So we got it here. You can show it off a little bit. I like to, whatever you like. The next thing you want to do is you just want to go forward step right here. All right, so if everyone wants to, yeah, we can just go do it. Yeah, plant it there, boom. That's your first count, and it's an 8-count dance. Half of it's the same thing, so I'll worry about that later. So we got the first count here, 1. 2, it's even easier. You just replace this back step. So we got 1, 2. We're halfway there. We're already crushing it here. Now the third step, all we have to do is replace back where our feet together. And the fourth step, we're just shifting our weight to the other side. So if we go over again, 1 through 4, we got first step forward, right step replace, third step back, fourth step shift weight. Now, since you go forward, you got to go backwards. So now in the 5-3, we're going to go 5th step, back with your right. 6th step, replace. Some of you may be seeing a pattern. That's what makes us an educated workforce. That's right. 7th step, we bring it back together. And then 8th step, you would do the hip replacement back. In 2 of the steps of the 8, we're not even stepping. It's that easy. Come on now. So we're going to go over it again. We got this. Ready? So we got 1 step forward, 2 replace, 3 step back, 4 hip weight, 5 step back, 6 replace, 7 together, hip back again. Y'all are crushing it. Come on. I even see some people practicing in the back. We're getting it. We're getting it. So we're going to up the difficulty a little bit. So now we're actually going to try doing it to a little bit of a beat. You saw us dancing in that beat. We're not going to go anywhere near there yet. We're going to start real slow. So I'm just going to clap to a beat while counting as well, and you just got to assign it all here. I'm going to go through real quick. It'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm going to be clapping while doing the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, we got some clapping as well, all right? If y'all want to join in, feel free, all right, ready? So we're going to do it. 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How do we feel about that? Okay, we can try. We feel okay. We feel okay. I think there's a lot of people in the audience who are like, yeah, I could do that. Do I see you down here, though? You're excited about clapping. All right, we're going to try that again one more time, and then we're going to up the beat a little bit more, okay? Here we go. So we're going to go 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Y'all crushed it. Come on, that was good. Now here's the thing. We're got to go a little bit faster. And this is where it gets tougher. So instead of the clapping going 1, 2, 3, 4, we're probably going to be going something more like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, I'm going to do a full 8 count before we start, and then we're just going to get into it. Again, audience, I see y'all sitting, I see us dancing. I'm just saying, we're having a good time down here. Feel free to jump in whatever you like. All right, ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That was even better than the last time. Come on. What do you think? Do you think we should break out the music? All right, so we even got music. And even the music's going to be able to talk to. And you're going to hear the music sort of, oh God. You're going to hear the music speak as well, and it's going to not count 4 or 8 because they don't count the hip shift, but they're always going to count the steps. Attaboy. One more.
2, 3, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
What did y'all think of that? Come on. That was perfect. So I got to be, we are done. Oh, no. So anyone wants to stay, we got one more. because so that was to the music we practice in the studio. It's great. And sorry if I can't talk. Sorry if I can't talk while we're dancing. It muffles the music a little bit, but I have a surprise. So we got that. That's the music we practice to. But then there's actually the music we dance to. So if you go to the club, the salsa bachata room, anything you want, these are the music we're going to play for you next, which you're going to hear. The only thing I got to say is, and I won't be able to speak while we're dancing. I'll be facing the front. I like to shake it, as you can tell. The biggest thing I'd say is I love shaking it. From day one with what my teacher has to deal with, I love doing it. Only thing I could say is you do it as much as you like. So long as that step is on beat, you're doing great. You're doing great, okay? So we're going to play this next song. We're going to play the song we actually performed to a little bit. And then where's it to go? We're just going to see how long we can last, dance a little bit, and go from there. As you see, I got the shoulder movements. But what's nice is that is always what you're going to be doing with the partner. One of you's going to be going forward while the other's going backwards. So next time if there's a salsa club party or anything happening at the city, I know that's something we can do all together. So thank y'all so much. Sorry if I went over time or anything, but thank y'all. Yeah, can we get is that all right if we join you? Can we join you?
I would normally start with my left, correct?
Oh, you start with, yes, exactly. Hey, thank y'all so much. Selena, well done.
Wow, who knew we had such talent amongst our employees? Thank you, Jack and Fablia. And thank you, everyone who joined us today. The Hispanic Heritage Month program, as well as the city leadership for your support and for this program, as well as all the Diversity Matters program hosted throughout the year. We hope you all learned about the important contribution of the Latinos in Fort Worth, enjoyed the beautiful sounds of the traditional mariachi performed by the Fort Worth students from J.P. Elders Middle School, and that you got the rhythm going with your feet moving with help from our talented City of Fort Worth dance stars. Thank you for attending, and this concludes our program.